Welcome back. In this video tutorial, I'll go through the overview of the different data types we have in Python. Python has a number of built-in data types that allow you to store and manipulate different kind of data. The first one I'm going to look at is numbers. Numbers are classified into three. The first one is integers. Integers are basically whole numbers that can be positive, negative, or zero. You can use the int data type to represent the integers. A good example here, and a very clear one, is you can assign a value, a whole number 10, to a variable called x. A negative is assigned to a variable called y, and a 0, z. If you check the type of this data type by executing the cell, you get the int, which means the int is just a data type that is used to represent the integers. The next kind of number we're going to look at is the floats. Floats are basically numbers that have decimal points, and we use a data type called float to represent the floats. For example, we can have a positive float or we can have a negative float, but we can also have a 0, but it will be 0.0 something. So in this case, we can have an example where a value 10.5 has been assigned to a variable called x, and another negative 0.25 has been assigned to a variable called y, and z has also been assigned to a decimal number. If we execute the cell, we're going to see that the data type for the variable y is float. So that's the second number that we can have in Python. The last number is the complex numbers. The complex numbers are basically numbers with a real and imaginary part. In Python, you can use the complex data type to represent complex numbers. The real part is specified before j, and the imaginary part is specified after it. For example, so we have, this is the j is the imaginary part, and this, what comes before j, is the real part. And you can have these examples. X is equals to, or is assigned the value 3 plus 5j, which is an example of a complex number, which basically it's a complex because it doesn't take one, there's one part that's imaginary and the other part is real. So if you check the type, you get it's complex. The next data type you're going to look at is the string. And basically, strings are just a sequence of characters that can be used to represent text. And the data type that we use here is the str, to represent the strings. And we have two ways of defining the string type. We have single quotes enclosing the text, or a single quote. Both of them are of string type, but make sure that when you're defining, you cannot have a double quote and a single quote. Both of them have to be the same. The same as if you decide to use single quote, you have to use single quote on both sides of the word. And the type is str, which is the string type. And you can also represent string in triple quotes if you want to define a multi-line string. For example, there are three lines, and you want to have them represented the way they are here. So you need to use three double quotes or three quotes. They can be single or double, depends what you want. And if you decide to print the type of X and also want to print the value X. So if you execute this, you get is of the string type is a string, and you have the three lines printed out. The next type of data type you're going to look at is the Boolean. For Boolean, these are just data types that allow you to define true or false. For example, you see that X has been assigned a value true and Y has been assigned a value false. If you check the type of either X or Y, you get is of the bool type. So basically, bool is the data type used to represent Boolean. The next thing we are going to look at is the lists. As the name suggests, these are basically a collection of items that can be of different data types. So in Python, we use the data type called list to represent the lists. For example, we can have a list of integers, We can also have a list of string characters, or you can have a mixture of different data types. For example, you can have this is an integer, this is a string character, and this is a float. So all this represents a list. If I decide to check the type of maybe let's check Y, if I execute this, you get, it tells you that whatever Y is of list data type. And the next thing you're going to look at is the tuples. And tuples are just similar to lists. The only difference is that it's immutable, meaning that you cannot modify or change the content once they are created. And in Python, we use tuple data type to represent the tuples. You can define a tuple using parentheses and separating the items with commas. For example, and you can have a tuple which contains a number of integers which are being separated by commas. You can have a tuple of string, a number of string characters separated by comma, or you can have a mixture of different data types, which is maybe one is an integer, and apple is a string, and 3.14 it's a float. And you can also check the type, and you can check, for example, Z. Type of Z is it's tuple. So this is the data type. And the next thing we look at is the sets. Basically, sets are just an ordered collection of unique items. So they have to be unique. You cannot have different numbers. They have to be unique. They have to be unique, like 1, 2, 3. So, and how to define them? You have to use the curly braces to enclose your items, which have to be separated by commas. You can also have another set of string characters, some sort of number of strings that are being separated by comma. You can also have a set of Boolean characters or Boolean values or variables. And the last one we are going to look at is the dictionaries, which are basically an ordered collection of key value pairs. By key, they mean this. The first part is the key, and the second part is the value. And these pairs, you can have a number of pairs, and these pairs have to be separated by commas. And the key and the value have to be separated by a full colon. You can have different value types or data types. These are basically integers. And the second one, the values are string character and integer and another string character. You can also have another pair that has the value being float type, and they are enclosed in curly braces. So we use a type called dict. A dict type is used to represent the dictionaries. And if we decide to check the type, let's see what we have. We can check for X. If I execute this, I get a dict. So basically, that's an overview of how to define the different data types we have in Python. And in the next series of videos, I'm going to explain these data types individually, and it's gonna be very clear. I know at this point it might be very confusing, and these data types, there's a lot that you can do. So in the next videos, I'll explain to you exactly how to work with them in Python, and it's gonna be very interesting. And thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and let me in the comment section what else you want to learn other than Python. You can tell me which part of data science you want to learn, be it machine learning, deep learning, anything that you would like to learn. Let me know. Thank you, and see you in the next video.